Notifications, reminders, messages, email, likes, comments, shared, 10 reasons why. We're living in a world where it's hard to turn away from the stimulation of social media. Any spare moment of the day is filled with desire to be validated, surprised, or to stalk others. Everything in our world of technology is predictable. However, the human spirit needs the unknown. We thrive on adventure and pushing ourselves in situations that scare us. When Travis approached us about traveling up to Voyagers National Park, we were excited to hear more. The plan was to travel around in boats, looking for rock formations that we could climb straight out of the water. And there was a small chance of some rope climbing at a mysterious place called Jeff's World. The whole trip was based on faith that we had in some pictures that we found on the mountain project. We didn't have a GPS, we didn't have certainty, we just had 2 small boats and some climbing gear. We arrived at the end of the road, ready to embark on our journey. After a new fuel line was purchased, we were on our way. The boundary waters of northern Minnesota are captivating. We looked out of our boats at the faces of granite, meeting the big fresh bodies of water. We set up camp and headed out to our first deep water soloing spot. Emerald Wall stood over 80 feet tall above the lake. Unfortunately, it angled the wrong way. The further you climbed up, the further you had to jump away from the wall. Nevertheless, all of us were excited to start climbing.
But I got my whole damn life caught up in moments entirely of yours. But I'm finding it harder to reason in order to grow. I'm finding it hard is a feeling that all of you know. No, no.
We came back to our camp that night, excited about our day of climbing. In the morning, we collected our thoughts over a warm cup of coffee. The crew piled into one boat and we headed for our next destination. Travis had researched some pictures that he found on the mountain project that showed an over-vertical boulder problem that we could climb.
Is that our go-to?
It took us a bit to find the island, and once we did, we were eager to start climbing again. We woke up slow the next morning, taking in the beautiful scenery. We did a quick gas inventory and found that we were running out of gas faster than we expected. We sent Jim off to fill our tanks. He came back telling us that he had spoke with the Canadian Border Patrol. Jim was excited to tell us that what we had heard about Jeff's World was true. We packed up camp and started to travel across the lake to check in at the Canadian border passing.
The situation's getting a little low. There's a gas pump right over there. Can't touch it. It's the Canadian side, so we have to go all the way back around to customs and then come all the way back.
Our slow boats chugged across the water as the weather began to turn for the worst. As I started to put on my rain gear, I could see a wall of rain race towards the boat. Lightning and thunder started to fill the sky. We knew we had to get off the water. It turned out, less than a quarter mile from where we were in the water, there was an island. The island had an abandoned boathouse where we could pull our boats out of the rain. Keeping dry in our rain suits, we explored the island as we waited for the storm to pass.
Where'd they go?
There were cabins on the island from the early 20th century. A collection of notes was on the table with writing from some of the original owners and visitors that had explored the island over the years. As the clouds cleared, we reflected on how the storm had brought us to this amazing place. What started out as a disaster turned into a chance to explore another world. We forged on to the Canadian border. We checked in with our friends to the north and drove our boats, now running on fumes, to the nearest resort. After shelling out $80 to the Canadian government to build our own campsites in the woods, we forged onward into Canada.
And I wanna know where it's coming from, where this is coming from, where this is coming from, and I wanna know what you're running from.
We looked around for the trailhead that led to Jeff's world with no luck. We built camp on the edge of a cliff that overlooked the lake. Dragging our gear up the hill was well worth it for the view. We quickly built a fire as all of the trees on the peninsula were jack pines. After setting up camp, we rewarded ourselves to a beer and some bratwurst before the wind died and we had to retreat from the mosquitoes in our tents. We woke up to a beautiful view. After getting the fire going again and had some breakfast, we heard a boat approaching from across the lake. We were told that a man named the Wizard was going to help us find the entrance. After we confirmed that this man was in fact the Wizard, we boarded onto his boat and he showed us the entrance to the trails that led to the rock walls. He told us that his son Jeff had bolted and climbed this wall after he had discovered it out of a float plane that they had once owned. He told us that there were many routes to climb. The more we talked to the Wizard, the more excited we became. After the Wizard took us back to our camp, we packed up and headed out across the lake again. We tied off the boats and marched through the thick woods. As we got further into the woods, we soon realized that while Jeff may be an expert rock climber and route setter, he could take a few lessons on us on how to build a trail. We doubled back a few times, excited whenever we found a stack of rocks that promised us that we were on the right track again. After a mile or so into the woods, the biting flies were onto us. We covered our faces with whatever we had and forged on. Kyle and I almost completely lost our motivation at one point as we had to carry our 40-pound camera cases.
We've been hiking with these 40-pound Pelican cases for well over a mile. And as a gnat just crawls over my lens, I can tell you there's more gnats here than I've ever seen in my life. That is what explains the head turban on Kyle. Spirits are low.
Finally, someone shouted that they had found what we had all been looking for.
We're in the right spot.
There were more routes than we had ever imagined, all set up for sport climbing. Each route was meticulously bolted into the strong granite wall. Even though we had planned poorly and ran out of water for the day, we climbed as much as we could, trying to take it all in.
Okay.
On an oververt wall like this, you can put it. It seemed like I was able to.
Up here in Canada, it's better.
No
last night at camp, we had a few more pockets of stormy weather. We all shared a beer before heading to bed early.
Spencer has really cleaned up his sleazy douchebag act since he's came out in nature.
Hey, I came out of Milwaukee.
After packing up camp for the last time, we headed out for the long voyage back to America. Sitting on the boats, we thought about how differently this world was from the one we usually lived in. We were busy all week without our phones or any contact with the outside world. We didn't have much, but at the same time we had all that we needed. At the mercy of the weather and the biting flies, we discovered that it's often the moments when you have the least control when you find life happens the most. We felt alive, vulnerable, and connected, all at the same time.